Hi, I'm Father Raluto of the Diocese of Malaybalay. I am currently serving as Academic Dean of SJVTS Theological Seminary in Cagayan de Oro. I was requested to offer a summary and reflection on A Stranger on the Road, which is chapter 2 of Pope Francis's Fratelli, Tutti. This chapter is devoted to the parable of the Good Samaritan told by Jesus in the Gospel of St. Luke. Let me use the See, Judge, Act schema to summarize this chapter. This chapter begins by inviting us to see a disturbing scenario. A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him off half dead. Abandoned on the wayside, he was seen by three passers-by, a priest, a Levite, and a Samaritan. To highlight the provocative details of these characters, Pope Francis invites us to notice that the wounded man was a Judean. Two of these passers-by were also Judeans who happened to be religious. The one who stopped and helped him was a Samaritan, whom the Jews looked down upon and considered impure. This chapter also pushes us to make a judgment as to who among the three was neighbor to the robber's victim. The answer, of course, is the Good Samaritan, as he was the one who treated the robber's victim with mercy. In this sense, the word neighbor does not refer only to our fellow citizens or those nearest us. There is a broader meaning of neighbors without borders that include foreigners and strangers. Ultimately, we ourselves become neighbors to all who are in need of our help. The inclusive meaning of neighbor is based on God's universal love for all living beings. However, as shown in the Good Samaritan, God's love has a preferential option for the weak, the vulnerable, the wounded, and the suffering. In this light, Pope Francis challenges us to prioritize and be present to those in need of help, regardless of whether or not they belong to our social group. Matthew's Gospel reminds us to recognize Christ Himself in each of our abandoned or excluded brothers and sisters. Finally, this chapter tells us that it is not enough to affirm that the Good Samaritan reveals what it means to be a neighbor to the robber's victim. There is an imperative to go and do likewise. This means to overcome the present society's lack of care for the frail and vulnerable by imitating the Good Samaritan, who is willing to bear the pain of other people's troubles and to make extra effort to include, integrate, and lift up the fallen. Pope Francis advises us not to do this alone as individuals. Let all Good Samaritans unite as family to be more efficient in this ministry of care for our brothers and sisters who are abandoned on the wayside. For my brief reflection on this chapter, let me offer two ecological insights. First, I invite you to dwell on the word neighbor and discover how this word is translated or being translated into our Filipino language, especially our Filipino translations of the Bible. In the Cebuano-Visayan version, for example, neighbor has been consistently translated as isigkatawo, which narrowly restricts the meaning of neighbors to fellow human beings only. Fortunately, the Tagalog Bible has translated it as kapwa, which is potentially open to a more inclusive meaning beyond fellow human beings. In any case, would it be more appropriate to translate neighbor as silingan in Cebuano-Visayan language or kapitbahay in Tagalog? After all, we are all inhabitants of the same planet, our common home. In this sense, the meaning of care for our neighbors goes beyond our fellow human beings and is extended to our ecological neighbors, including plant and animal species. For like many of our fellow human beings, many of God's other creatures are endangered and have become extinct, largely due to abusive robbers and indifferent bystanders. This will bring me to my second insight. I think the caregiving attitude of the Good Samaritan needs to be supplemented with a prophetic concern for justice. Pope Francis mentions this in passing when he asks, "Will we pursue the thieves?" We should feel indignant, he said, when the victims of injustices are abandoned on the road. In the context of today's ecological tragedies brought about by climate emergency, it is not enough for us to simply help the victims economically. We must also advocate for climate justice by going after those who have caused their human-induced ecological tragedies. The violators are morally obliged to give justice to their victims, especially the poor, and repair the damages of their ecological sins. Brothers and sisters, let me close this reflection with a beautiful line from a prayer to the Creator in Fratelli, Tutti. Lord, move us to create healthier societies and a more dignified world, a world without hunger, poverty, violence, and war. Amen.